Hey guys, Rich from Rich Mid Gaming back again with another how to play video. This time we're focusing on the other side of the core box. This is the OG Captain America Steve Rogers Avengers. And once again helping me out, I'm joined by Quinn.
Hello there.
Excellent. That is now your official greeting every time you come on the channel, I think. So guys, we tackled the Cabal in the first video in this series. We thought we would round out the core box, or at least the core box affiliations, with the Avengers. And we have a lot of characters to choose from in affiliation. I believe 24, 25 are in affiliation at the moment. Seems like there's more added every week. I think at least once a month we get a new character being added into there, don't we, Quinn?
Yeah, that does track in terms of how many characters are in the affiliation, right? Game came out in November, so like
20
3
months?
months.
Yeah.
It's over by one.
They're above par. They're above par.
Definitely.
So let's quickly look then at who is in the Avengers and who we can choose from. Or we can choose from anyone, but who we're going to be looking at first. So we've obviously got Steve Rogers, Captain America himself. We've got then Sam Wilson's Captain America. We've got Ant-Man Beast, Black Panther, Black Widow Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. We've got Blade, Cable, Captain Marvel, Deadpool, Hawkeye, Hulk, Iron Fist, Iron Man, Luke Cage, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Thor, Prince of Asgard, Vision, War Machine, Wasp, and Wolverine. Wow, that's quite a lineup there, isn't it?
I'm glad you had to read that out and not me.
No, absolutely. So let's start, as we did with all of these, let's take a quick look at Captain America and more specifically his leadership ability, which is called A Day Unlike Any Other. So this is really simple and straightforward. Each turn, you may reduce the power cost of the first superpower used by each allied character by 1 to a minimum of 1. That means, for example, that Beast's basic instinct is going to cost you 1 power rather than the normal 2 power, but it also means that it's not only during just your turn, it's also during your opponent's turn as well. So Captain America's bodyguard, for example, gets reduced to 1 power, so any reactive abilities that you've got, it also applies there as well.
Yeah, I mean, did you just say Beast basic instincts? Because I don't think that's what that's called, and I think that sends a very different message.
It really does, yes. Baser instincts.
Yeah, baser instincts. I don't think anyone really wants to get too acquainted with Beast's basic instincts.
No, I've seen that film, and yeah, definitely not. Quinn, leadership ability, for me, it's good. Like, it's not the best in the game, but it's very, very good.
So I think this is sort of a very common feeling amongst the community regarding Steve Rogers is his leadership is really, really good. It's just a shame it's attached to probably one of the worst 4 threat models in the game.
Yeah, it really is a shame. The guy can take a punch. Like, he can take a, especially on his flip side, he can take a punch.
I've heard that he can do this all day.
That is, especially on his flip side, he can definitely do this all day, can't he? But yeah, you are right. He is he's not the greatest 4 threat in the game, but I still think his leadership ability is very, very good. And running a Steve Rogers Captain America Avengers roster is still absolutely viable in this game, I would say. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
You can say no.
I mean, yeah, I would agree. I just wasn't expecting you to be waiting for a response.
Oh,
at the
okay.
end of that. I was like, oh, what?
So Quinn, we spoke in the last video and we said that typically your roster is built up around a sort of core of 3 or 4 characters. Obviously, we've got Captain America in this particular roster. Who else do you see as making up that core of the squad that you're going to be taking for most games?
So this is a little bit skewed slightly because I do have a bit of experience with Steve's Avengers. There's a very specific 17 threat list I absolutely love to play and think makes great use of Steve's leadership. The 2 I'm going to say will probably be a bit weird sounding to you and the folks at home, but I'm going to say Black Panther and 2 threat back Black Widow.
Okay. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And I get, obviously, with Black Panther, he's got the mantle and he's got the pounce. So whether he's colliding with another character or not, that pounce can be really useful for just basically, when I say a free movement, I mean a movement that isn't taking an action. But then he's got that reactive as well, which is, his mantle of the Black Panther is the
It's a
attack dice, isn't
reroll.
it? The
He
rerolls.
has a reactive, but only when he flips.
He does, doesn't he? Yes, that is the. Is it the vibranium armor? Yes, that's the one.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
it's something along those lines because it's just instead of counting blanks, he just gets 2 extra dice, which is a lot worse. So try not to get your Panther flipped, folks.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I like one of them. But Black Widow for me in an Avengers list, and when we go through the types of objectives that we want to be looking at, she's one of, if not the best, back objective holder, isn't she? The fact that she's got that stealth, meaning that you've got to get within range 3 of her, and if you're within range 2, she also pulls up martial artist as well.
Yeah, and also just like being a 2 threat that has a long move, it actually goes a very long way to making her really quite good at the objective game, because you'll often find yourself in scenarios where a bunch of people have been dazed in a big fight in the middle of the board, and potentially, say, on gamma shelters, your opponent's you've left Black Widow till one of your last activations. Your opponent might be all activated out at that point, and they've only got a single injured model on that back shelter, and she suddenly goes, "Time to be a hero, everyone! Run, score 3 VPs, massive swing throughout the game." And she's surprisingly good considering she's a 2 threat that doesn't really do much in a proactive sense. Offensively.
Yeah, no, I agree. She's going to be ticking over the points for you, isn't she? And I most definitely prefer her over her 3 threat. I won't say counterpart, but alter option. Even though she's got the interrogate, and scoring VPs is always a nice thing, but yeah, she's a little bit lackluster, isn't she?
Yeah, there is also one interesting thing to note with 3 Threat Widow and Steve is that Interrogate doesn't get reduced by a day, unlike any other.
No, because it's used in the cleanup phase, not during a round. So yeah, would not affect that. So yeah, Black Panther, I think he's one of the few, and I actually think the Avengers as a whole is one of the few affiliations where I don't mind taking some affiliated leaders of other affiliations.
Yeah, there are quite a few of them.
There's a couple to choose from, but yeah, so Black Panther I really like. I also like Thor in there as well. I think, yes, he's probably a little bit under the curve for a 5 threat now, but I still think
at the time he was really good. I've just done a little count, and there are 5 leaders of other affiliations that end up in the Avengers, which is a lot, and I think most of them are quite viable.
Yeah, so we've got obviously Black Panther. We have Cable, who's the leader of the X-Force. We have, who else have we got? She-Hulk, who is the leader of the A-Force. We've then got Thor, leader of Asgard. Blade, leader of the Midnight Suns. And am I missing one?
Oh, no, you've got them all.
Oh, and then I suppose you could say that you've also got Captain America as well, haven't you? Who is another,
but he's the actual proper leader.
Yeah,
so
another leader. Sam Wilson, Captain America, Quinn. When we did the Cabal list, we didn't even entertain the thought of putting in the other leader into our list. Would a Sam Wilson, Captain America, make it in a Steve Rogers list for you?
So I haven't really played a lot of Avengers since the advent of Sam, especially Steve Avengers. But I think, Steve actually does help out with Sam Wilson's kit quite a lot, because Sam has a charge. Being able to do that turn 1 is actually really nice with that long move. A turn 1 power airlift, I think it's called, to place someone within 2 is also quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a potential there for him, isn't there? I think. Let's talk about the big hulking green elephant in the corner, Hulk.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with She-Hulk there. I was like, she's not that bad.
Do we see Hulk in an Avengers list?
Not very often, no. Unfortunately, Hulk is one of the probably is the most maligned model in the game in terms of just not being. I wouldn't say Hulk isn't good, because there are certain strategies that you can employ that make him decent or slightly better than decent.
Yeah.
But for a big six threat that is supposed to be like a brawling machine, yeah, he struggles a lot, especially in Avengers. Well, not especially in Avengers. I think Avengers is one of his nicer homes, because he doesn't have great power generation, so getting things for cheaper can be nice over
It's
the
always
course of the
nice.
game.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are some scenarios where he can still be very effective. The terrain or enemy character of size 4 or less, medium throw, only costing 1 per turn, or per round, I should say, is very, very nice. I think that becomes probably the strongest throw in the game.
Aside from Magneto, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he struggles from not having a flip side. And we've said it before, not having a flip side and power generation. So
Yeah.
he's really hard. And everything in me wants to include a Hulk in an Avengers roster, but I think it's very, very difficult to put him in there.
Yeah, it's very difficult to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look then at some of the higher threat characters, because obviously here we've got a 4, a 4, and a 2 in Black Panther and Captain America. We've got a couple of in affiliation big or at least higher threat characters.
And
Yeah,
then,
we've got Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Cable.
fine.
I mean, for me, there's only really one of them who I would put in my list personally, and that's Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do quite like Thor in Steve Avengers just for the turn 1 for Asgard. I think that can be quite fun. As we all know, for Asgard is a cursed ability that will never roll well. But
This is true.
on the off chance that it does, it can be quite impactful. And also being able to, do a move size 4 throw is also quite nice for turn 1.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind Thor. Scarlet Witch is definitely a contender, being the mystic powerhouse that she is.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's one of the best 5 threat characters in the game. We put her S tier. She definitely stacks up against Angela and MODOK, her other 2 counterparts up there. And she's affiliated, right? For me, there's really no reason to not put her in the list. A couple of other characters then that I would put in for consideration. We actually spoke about him in the Cabal list, but that's Iron Fist.
So the interesting thing with Danny here is, or rather, Danny ran the Immortal Iron Fist of Kunlun, as we know and love him, is that he actually gets absolutely no benefit out of Steve's leadership, but yet he's still just so good that you kind of want to bring him anyway, as like your affiliated 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also comes with a very nice tactics card as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those few affiliations where you could actually consider, Luke Cage in place of Iron Fist, just because Cage actually makes a lot more use out of that leadership with his too dangerous to ignore, getting that for 1. It's another sort of pseudo bodyguard, and also making his throw 2 cost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Street Fighter goes from 2 to 1, I think, wouldn't it? It'd be a 1 cost.
I haven't looked at that. Oh yeah, in my head it was a 3 power size 3 throw, not a 2 power size 2 throw.
Yeah, so it's 2, which is still very good, but a 1-2 is even better, right? If you're paying less power than the size of the thing that you can throw, I always see that as being in a very, very good place. It's only terrain, but even so, it's still pretty good. There are some stinkers in this affiliation, though, aren't there, Quinn?
Yeah, but by virtue of being the biggest affiliation, you're gonna get some duds.
So should we start with Iron Man?
I like Iron Man. Don't bully Iron Man. I don't like him in Avengers, but I don't mind him in Cabal. I thought we were going to go more down the line of Ant-Man having absolutely zero synergy with Steve.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's just bad. Yeah, no synergy whatsoever. And the reason why is every single one of his superpowers costs 1 power. And whilst you can reduce the cost of them,
in the case of Hitch a Ride.
Or 0 Hitch a Ride, yeah. So whilst does technically reduce them, but it is to a minimum of 1. I think Wasp is the same, but she's got the PIM discs, I think, is the
Yeah,
one
she's
that
got the
she can
throw, which
use.
is actually quite nice. But I mean, still, yeah, there are just so many other options. I think you'd rather take a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So, what are some other characters then that you think work quite nicely in the affiliation?
Vision is always good, getting his calculated trajectory for one, or his phasing for one as well. Both really great. I mean, Vision's generally just a really good character.
Yeah,
Also, you've got Hawkeye. Hawkeye's really great turn one with Steve's leadership. You know, getting that hook arrow for one, immediately being range 3 up with a range 5 shot is really good. And I think a trend you'll see a lot of the time with Steve's Avengers is you really want to capitalize on that leadership during turn one. That's when it
yes.
has the biggest impact on a game.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and because it does, characters who are built. We mentioned Thor earlier, but characters who have those turn one players, they're typically out of reach, aren't they, of just their native power generation. You
Yeah.
need to have something else to be able to do it, whether it's an advanced R&D or, in this case, reducing the power cost by one. So yeah, I think those turn one players, those turn one shenanigans are very, very nice. Let's talk then about some out of affiliation characters, because whilst they've got a very large roster, I still think there is room, isn't there, for some unaffiliated characters to make the cut in a Steve Rogers list.
Oh, most definitely. And sort of the 17 threat list that I've run quite a few times with Steve just to try and make Steve good. It actually worked relatively well. So we've already got that core of Captain America, Steve Rogers, Black Panther, and Black Widow, right? So that's 10 threat.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what you think what makes up the 7 threat that is unaffiliated in that list.
I like Medusa in
Hmm.
Avengers. Again, reducing that cost of Royal Decree, or indeed reducing the cost of Hair Flip, so it
Yeah,
becomes a 2 cost throwing size 3 character. I think is pretty good. But I'm not sure what you're going with.
so what I ended up going with was my favorite 3 threat in the game. Your boy, you know him, you love him, Baron Zemo.
Yep.
Simply because he makes brilliant use of that leadership turn one, getting a charge off immediately, positioning himself further up the board to help with those re-rolls for your entire team. I think he works really solidly with Cap. Getting cheaper steel rushes and counter strikes and all those sorts of things. And then along with Zemo, there came a spider, or rather a symbiote. And yeah, I've brought in Venom as well for that 17 because a turn one web snare without the need for R&D is incredibly good.
Yeah.
Just anytime your opponent moves a model forward, you just go, okay, Venom activates, moves, potentially gets within 4. If not, moves again, is probably definitely within range 4. And it goes, 1 power, medium pull, oh look, you're in range for Zemo to come and stab you now.
Yeah, I like it. And well, whether you're in range for Zemo or, if you're running a Hawkeye, for example, instead of Zemo, because I don't mind that in,
Yeah, I
in,
don't
in
hate
there
it.
as well. Pulling him up so then Hawkeye can get, 2 shots off turn one as well. Really, for me, characters that work well in Steve's list are any characters with both active and reactive superpowers. So superpowers you perform yourself during your own activation, but then any superpowers where you react to an enemy. So with Venom, for example, reducing the cost of, is it so many snacks? I think it is. Yeah, reducing the cost of so many snacks to 1 is just very, very powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So moving on to tactics cards, and Avengers are one of the few affiliations where we have 3 tactics cards available to us. Although one of them, Quinn, is not really very good, is it?
I mean, one of them is called anger management, and one of them is a card you should not take ever. Of those 2 pieces of information I've given to the audience, I think they might be able to draw a conclusion there.
Yeah, and actually, they tactics cards, they're no convocation, are they? in terms of
No,
the
there are no
tactics cards
complications.
available to them. So let's start then with anger management. It is very, very specific, and I actually think this shouldn't be an Avengers affiliated card. So
They really shouldn't.
basically, another any non-Hulk Avenger, so it's got to be an Avenger that does this, within 3 of an allied Hulk may spend up to 5 power. For every power they spend, Hulk suffers damage and gains power equal to the damage suffered. Why would you want to damage Hulk? Well, Hulk gets stronger, well, theoretically gets stronger the more damage he takes. Hulk is already such a niche character that if you include him in your squad, you're probably taking him with Gamma Launch. You're never going to take up 2 tactics card slots for Hulk. So I think
also, like, spending potentially 5 power to damage your own model. Well, I say spend 5 power, transfer 5 power from one person to another. Yeah, like, you're never really going to be able to do this turn 1 unless you have some really weird setup with, like, Wong and someone else, and, like, the new Doctor Strange, I guess.
yeah, potentially, but
Yeah,
not a
no.
fan. Not a fan at all. Their other card, well, their second card, Second Wind, is another card that feels just not very good. Any number of allied Avengers may spend 1 power to play this card. Characters that spend a power get to remove the stun special condition and remove 1 damage. So, 1 power for 1 damage is okay. Like
Yeah, not
it's
bad.
nothing it's nothing special. The stun, if it was a couple of other special conditions included in there, maybe stun, shock, and slow, and you could remove one of them, I think it'd be very good. But for me, it's not a card that I typically would include in my in any Avengers roster, let alone Steve Rogers.
Yeah, I think, like, maybe more towards sort of the early days of the game where healing was less commonly available in the form of other tactics cards and, the likes of Strange, OG Strange, that is. Technically,
Yes.
Luke Strange could do it as well, but yeah. But back then, maybe it was more commonly seen, but I think now it's just sort of fallen by the wayside in terms of power level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Their third card, then, however, is, in my mind, a very, very good leadership or tactics card for the Avengers. So it's called Avengers Assemble. Any number of allied Avengers characters may spend 1 power to play this card.
Yeah,
Advance short.
and,
1
like,
power for an advance is pretty good.
yeah, it's really good. I actually also think there's a slight clause underneath all those rules that says that you have to shout the word Avengers when you play it and then whisper the word Assemble, just like Cap does in Endgame.
Avengers! Assemble.
I like that. I like that. That should be mandatory. So yeah, I think for me, Avengers Assemble tactics card goes in every single time. And at that point then, because it's so good, it almost encourages you to try to take as many affiliated characters as possible because more characters are going to be able to benefit from this, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the time, I mean, at any game you play with Avengers, you're going to have, most, in quotation marks, of your team is going to be affiliated because otherwise you're not playing Avengers team. So, like, you're always going to get a decent bit of use out of this. You're usually going to get at least 3 characters able to move. And, like, during pivotal moments in a game where, like, say, I mean, coming back to Gamma again,
Yeah.
Gamma's just one of those crises where positioning is so important in terms of VPs. Or, like, if you're in a situation where your Black Widow is just shy of running and grabbing that last extract you need to, like, win the game after someone was dazed on the other side of the board, like, just being able to pull that out and be like, bam, Avengers Assemble, get that little bit extra I needed, and just, like, cinch the victory from there. It's really good card.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It's very, very useful. And any out of activation movement is typically going to be pretty strong, isn't it? In this game, and this card is no, this card is no exception to that rule. So yeah, for me, it always goes straight in the list. We're going to look then at some other tactics cards then. So there's a lot of characters to choose from here. And a lot of those characters have cards that they bring with them. We mentioned the Heroes for Hire card that either Iron Fist or indeed Luke Cage can take with him. Hulk obviously has his Gamma Throw, I think it's called, isn't it?
Gamma Launch.
Gamma Launch, sorry, yes, indeed. Scarlet Witch obviously comes with the Whims of Chaos, a very, very good tactics card, and No More Mutants. What tactics cards that are character specific would you be looking at bringing into your roster, Quinn?
So I think it depends a lot on sort of what characters you end up taking. With regards to that 17 threat list I mentioned that has Venom and Zemo in, I think Lethal Protector is a great one if you're going to bring Venom. I think Venom actually makes a very good Avenger generally. Making his superpowers cheaper is really good on him because he has his active ones where, he's either getting a Clintar Rage for 2 cost or he's getting a Web Snare for 1 cost. Or, you're doing, what's it called again? So many snacks?
So many snacks, yeah.
Yeah, because that and the Spender should have swapped names because obviously they
Yeah, it
really
does.
should. AMG,
Yeah, it
get
does
on
feel like it.
Yeah, so he has so many uses for Steve's leadership, and then Lethal Protector, adding another layer of protection on top of that bubble you've already got with Steve with his bodyguards, is really nice. Yeah, it depends a lot on what other characters you're taking. So, if you've got your Iron Fist and your Luke Cage, you're taking Heroes for Hire. If you've got a Quicksilver, for example, who we didn't really mention, but actually does quite well with Steve's leadership, getting that long move for 1 power turn 1, really good. Like having
Yeah,
can I borrow that with Quicksilver?
yeah, and he's another character that has that reactive ability as well, isn't he? And Can't
Yeah,
Catch
he's got
Me.
Can't Catch Me. Yeah,
Which again, being able to reduce the cost of that. He also comes with quite a nice tactics card as well, doesn't he? Like you say, is it
yeah.
can I borrow
Can
that?
I borrow that? Where he punches someone and steals an asset from them.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that it's an asset, not an extract, so you can't steal civilians.
No, you can't steal civilians, but a hammer or any other such thing like that.
Yeah, hammers tends to be the main thing you steal with Quicksilver, and yeah, he really likes having a hammer, as does every model in the game.
Most characters like a hammer, don't they? Let's then turn our attention to restricted cards. We said it in the last video, we'll say it again in this video. Whenever you're building a roster, look at the restricted cards. There is a reason they are restricted. They are typically the best cards in the game. Now, there are currently 6, but we believe that one of them is going to move from the restricted into the banned category, which is all you've got. And we believe that Bitter Rivals is going to make it onto the restricted list. So once again, giving us 6. So that's what we're going to go with in the hopes that this video stays relevant for longer. What restricted cards are you looking at there, Quinn, as your sort of go-to ones for Steve's Avengers?
So, this is sort of an out-of-the-box one. It's not one you see very often anymore, but I think Medpack is actually really good with Steve's Avengers. Like, specifically, I use this for Black Panther a lot of the time because you really don't want Black Panther to flip. Black Panther flipping is a very bad time for old T'Challa. Yeah, he doesn't enjoy it at all. And just sort of prolonging the inevitable and keeping him healthy that little bit longer just can go a really long way.
Yeah, I like it. I do like it a lot. And 2 for 3 is really nice. And I like that it's range 3 as well. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of...
also being able to do it to yourself is one of its biggest upsides
Yes.
compared to the likes of Patch Up.
Yeah, so Patch Up, you can spend more, you can heal more, but it's only range 2 and it has to be another character, so you can't do it to yourself. There's a few attack ability tactics cards with the Avengers, isn't there? There's Thunderwave that works with Cap and Thor. There's, I think, is it Ricochet that works with Iron Man and Cap? I'm trying to think who else has got them. There's a few in there. War Machine, I think, has War Machine got one, or did one come in the War Machine pack? Maybe I think
War Machine has Air Force, which lets him double activate with Captain Marvel. There is an attack card that has War Machine on it. I think it's
It's
called
maybe
like
what
Maximum Firepower or something.
that is the one. Yes, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on those sorts of cards? Because for me, as a general rule of thumb, I'm not including them.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of them. There are some exceptions. So basically, the biggest drawback with these cards is you still have to use an action to do the attack,
Yeah,
which is really, really bad. Like you're effectively paying a tactic card and an action on a character in the middle of a game in order to get one of these attacks. And the attacks, generally are better than what people have on their cards, but aren't quite good enough in order to actually justify the amount of resources you're putting into them.
yeah.
One of the few exceptions, I think, is the Seven Sons of Cinnabus on Strange. That's a really good attack, and I think you're quite happy to use that action a lot of the time, but that's more related to Strange's kit in general rather than how good the card itself actually is.
What other tactics cards are we looking at then? Because obviously we're going to be taking a few character specific. I think Whims of Chaos goes in if you're taking Scarlet Witch.
Yeah,
Lethal Protector goes in if you're taking Venom.
same for Heroes for Hire with Cage and
And
Knight.
Heroes for Hire as well.
Sorry, Danny ran the Immortal Fist online.
Indeed, say his full name. What other cards are we looking at that sort of go in there? Do you think?
Sort of enhance that playstyle. I think Disarm can be a really good one for the Avengers. Depending on what you're up against, you may or may not end up with priority. But if you're not ending up with priority, it means that your opponent likely has multiple big threats on the board, and being able to just turn around to one of those and say, "Two less dice to you this round, go away,"
Yeah.
is actually really impactful.
No, it is. It's a very, very good card, and I think it's probably worth mentioning, isn't it, that when we're playing the Avengers, it's a very, very different play style, isn't it, to the Cabal that we looked at before. With the Cabal, you typically want to beat your enemy to a pulp, right, and take off, maybe 50% of the enemy's characters off the board, then giving you the advantage and either KOing them completely or managing to score more victory points in that way. With the Avengers, it's a very different play style, isn't it, compared to that?
Yeah. So attrition gets used a lot of the time as a term for teams that want to fight you and eventually wear you down over time. Whereas Avengers are an attrition faction, with some quotation marks there, but not in the same vein as the other ones. Avengers, or at least Steve's Avengers, are an attrition list that wins by outlasting your opponent rather than outdamaging them over the course of a game, I find.
No, I would agree. And yeah, look at how many characters in there have got higher than average stamina or higher than average defensive stats,
Yeah,
or
or they've got some form of defensive tech.
yeah, defensive tech, bodyguard ability. You've got is it Too Dangerous to Ignore on Luke Cage?
Yep.
You've got obviously Captain America, the OG bodyguard on there as well, or even even people like Quicksilver, right? Who's got Can't Catch Me? So a lot of reactive defensive tech that really, really utilizes that leadership ability really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, a great deal.
Crisis cards then, and as we spoke about in the previous video, we're going to really look more at the setup and the layout of the crisis cards, rather than the individual cards themselves. What scenarios are you looking for, Quinn, when you're looking at a Steve Rogers Avengers list?
So I think one of the main strengths of Steve's Avengers, not that there are many, if we're honest, is their adaptability to any sort of crisis layout. I don't think they mind whatever they're playing on. If you're on Lee, that's fine. You've got Black Widow as a back point holder. You've got Panther to duel someone on flank. You've got Steve to potentially fight someone on another one with his wild push and his guaranteed throw on the spender. If you're on an E, once again, you're all sort of clustered up. Cap can make better use of his bodyguard, for example. If you're on like a pay to secure, secure, then you're saving power through the leadership, which you can then funnel into paying for those, roles to flip.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and I think you're right. And I think one of the strengths of a Steve Rogers list is that adaptability. I think, like you mentioned, you look at a Black Order list or a Brotherhood list, or there's a couple out there, and you just know beforehand that it's going to be a very short or not very wide in terms of the number of characters that person is going to be taking. It'd be 3, maybe 4 models at the most. Sometimes 5, maybe if you're on a 20 threat. But you've seen me play a 3 wide on 20 threat, Quinn, and it can work.
Yeah, I still have nightmares about that.
I don't. It was one of my favourite games ever. But I think it's that adaptability, like you say, going back and looking at the plethora of characters that we can take and the varying threat levels that we're at, because there's so many characters in Affiliation to choose from, and there are some, if not best in slots for each threat level, very, very high, high caliber characters at each threat level. So you don't have to look too far outside of the Affiliation, which means that it gives you so much more adaptability when it comes to actually building that squad for the game that you're going to play, because you're not struggling with getting over that 50%, are you? Because the vast majority of characters you're taking are going to be part of your Affiliation anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's just one of those things where, by virtue of being 24 characters in at this point, like you've got a tool for every job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What are the crises that we are trying to avoid then, Quinn? If we see that our opponent's got a particular extract or a particular secure, what are the cards that we're looking to try and avoid during that setup process?
I mean, in the previous video with the Cabal, we mentioned Wakanda Herb, and we had like a plan implemented for that. I don't think Avengers are particularly good at that themselves. So I think avoiding Wakandan Herb is a good one. You don't really have any of those sort of extracts that have a massive payoff for doing a certain thing, like the Wakandan Herb or Deadly Legacy Virus.
Yeah.
Anything like that where your opponent can be very specifically teched into how they're going to play that, you kind of want to avoid, because I mean, we mentioned that Avengers are sort of a generalist faction. They take all comers, they're adaptable, but that adaptability comes at the cost of not being able to have these very specific plays that other rosters can have.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I agree completely, which I think is one of the reasons why they're so fun to play, and I think they're a great affiliation to start with.
Yeah,
Most of
they're
us that
quite good for like exploring the game in that sense, because they're never going to be like, oh, this is really bad for me, but that they're not going to be like, oh, this is the best thing ever. They're very middle of the road, I find.
Yeah, I think, and I think the barrier to entry to play them is very, very low as well. They, by virtue of the fact that they were the first or one of the first 2 affiliations in the game, they are less complex with their game mechanics. Now, as the game has, progressed and we've had characters put into the Avengers, some of them do have more complex mechanics, but it's a good grounding, and on a good Avengers list you're going to get to understand the sort of full game and what is and isn't possible. So Quinn, anything else to add then from across any part of it, whether it be the characters, the tactics cards, or indeed the crisis?
No, not really. It's just once again to reiterate that Steve Avengers are not in the upper echelons of competitive play, but that's not to say that you can't just play them and have fun with them. Like that, as we said like moments ago, very good for exploring the game. And if that's just something you want to do until you find something you're more comfortable with, or you find that niche you want to slot into, I think they are a really great faction to just sort of dick around with effectively.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's quickly then take a look at a roster that me and Quinn have put together. Okay then guys, so this is the quick roster that Quinn and myself have put together. You'll see some characters that you've seen in other lists, or at least 1, maybe 2 that you've seen in other lists, but let's go through these in order. So starting then, we've got Baron Zemo, Black Panther, Black Widow, Captain America, Hawkeye, Vision, Venom, Thor Prince of Asgard, Scarlet Witch, and we actually opted for Luke Cage this time rather than Danny Rand. And the reason for this is he can make more use of Captain America's leadership ability in Street Fighter and Too Dangerous to Ignore, so both an active and reactive superpower, but it allowed us to bring along the tactics card that we wanted as well. So we then got Gamma Wave, Mutant Madmen, Riot Sparks, we've got Fear Grips, everyone loves a hammer, Research Station, and Montesi Formula. We brought this card because it gives some of our lower threat and indeed one of our higher threat characters who's not very good, an ability or an attack ability that is actually quite nice. A Beam 3, 6 strength energy attack on Captain America works.
It gives them something to do on their turn.
Tactics cards then, we've obviously taken the Avengers Assemble that we spoke about. We've taken Disarm, we've taken Field Dressing, Heroes for Hire, Lethal Protector, Med Pack, PSD, and Whims of Chaos. Now, as Quinn mentioned, the list that we've built is really around outlasting your opponents and making sure that whether it's a Black Order or a Cabal or even a Brotherhood of Mutants list that you're coming up against, you've got enough defensive tech in there to be able to, just essentially outlast your opponent. Okay, Quinn, so as we did before, let's run through a couple of different scenarios. And actually, before we do that, we've got quite a nice spread here, haven't we, of threat levels that we can call upon.
I think plays into that theme we're going with in terms of just exploring the game a bit as one of your first affiliations.
Yeah, definitely. But let's pick one that's probably quite a lower played extraction, but I think works really well. So Montesi Formula. What are we looking at then? So obviously we've got Cap. Who else are we taking in the mix for our 17th threat?
Probably going along the lines of that 17th threat I mentioned earlier with Widow, Panther, Venom, and Zemo. Zemo could potentially be like a Hawkeye or a Luke Cage if you wanted to. If I were going to switch out Zemo, I'd probably favour Cage over Hawkeye, just because Hawkeye's not the biggest fan of energy attacks.
He really isn't, is he?
Some can say the same about Venom, but that's not really Venom's actual weakness. Venom's actual weakness is attacks from outside of range 3.
Because he's probably going to get 1 or 2 saves. That 7 stamina does really help Venom, I think.
7 stamina really helps, and also, if people are attacking with energy attacks within 3, like those beams are, he's getting the opportunity to slap them back.
Oh, absolutely. So many snacks is going to be coming out. And again, only costing 1 power. So very nice.
If you take like a few points of damage off of that beam, which I think is relatively likely, suddenly you're getting your heal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look then. Research Station. So we spoke, didn't we, earlier when we were putting this list together, and we both liked it because it catches people out, right? 16 threat is not a very common threat level, and it's the one that I think most people, when they're building their rosters, kind of forget about a little bit. So what are you thinking then alongside Cap for the Research Station?
I think we're going quadruple 4 threat on this one.
Yeah.
I think we're going with Panther and Vision for your other 2 affiliated, and then taking my boy Venom out for another spin, just because all of those models have some form of enemy displacement effect. Vision's got his throw, Panther has guaranteed pushes, Venom has a throw and a pull superpower, and then, Cap, if he's up against the right person, i.e. anyone that's size 2 or less, can actually do a fair bit of repositioning.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I do actually quite like that. I think you've got some really nice varied attacks there as well. Once again, a lot of defensive tech. So obviously you've got Venom's. I suppose you can still call it a defensive tech. You can react and then attack, potentially with We Are Venom, to remove damage from yourself. I also like the fact that we brought PSD. I think we're going to see more and more Convocation players. They're the shiny new thing, so we're going to see lots of DD, lots of Convocation, and they all bring massive mystic attacks, and this is a fantastic card to be able to at least mitigate some of that damage that you would have taken. Lethal Protector as well is obviously great, and then once again you've got Captain America's bodyguard. Another scenario then that we see played quite a lot is Gamma Wave. So this is the one where it's on the E map, and when you're outside of range 2 during the cleanup phase, you're going to be suffering damage. And I think we've got some nice characters here, haven't we, Quinn, who can make the most of that by repositioning people. So we've got Cap. Who else are we going with for the research, or for the gamma wave, sorry?
Specifically on this one, Vision is actually a very good call. He's got that beam, which is always exceptional on an E. And, his throw can get people off of points in a pinch, or can, even throw them outside of range of the gamma shelter so they take extra damage.
No, I do like that. I really do like that as well. I quite like Black Widow for gamma shelter.
Yeah,
having her
sort of a sneaky point stealer or point sitter, depending on what you want.
Really, this is where I would then look to bring in potentially a Scarlet Witch to make up that last 5.
Wanda's a good choice here, but I mean, we also have our other 5 threat who
we do
once again plays into this play style of just sort of going, go away from me and throwing people around.
Yeah,
and on Gamma, turn 1 for Asgard feels really nice, even though, as we've said before, it's a cursed attack.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about having these 3 as your core for Gamma is then really you can make a call on either Scarlet Witch or Thor, depending on what you're coming up against, right? Yeah. If we are coming up against those big Mystic attackers, well, actually, Scarlet Witch is going to be far less effective than Thor, even with a hammer throw, right? Hammer throw dishing out shock is going to be super, super strong if you get it onto a Strange or a Clear or somebody else like that, or staggering them as well, right? Taking an action away from them next turn. And as you say, for Asgard, turn 1 feels really nice on
and then
this.
If you're into Convocation, just sort of that multitude of throws just can really start to add up against that sort of lackluster physical defense they seem to be known for.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, hopefully everyone has enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found it useful. Like I said, this has been the second of our how to play videos. I don't know what affiliations we're going to tackle next. We haven't yet recorded them or haven't yet decided. So we're going to be working our way through all of these affiliations. So if you're a big Wakanda player, or if you're a big Brotherhood of Mutants player, we may have something to talk about. Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to join me and Quinn on any of these videos, reach out to me directly. There is my email address in the about page of this video, or reach out to me on Discord or directly on Facebook. Remember, we've got our giveaway running for the month of September, so to be part of that and to be with a chance of winning a brand new character pack, make sure you leave a comment on this or any other video for the month of September, and make sure you've hit that subscribe button and you'll be with a chance to win a brand new character pack. It leaves me just enough time, as always, to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.
Ta-ra.